Do you love Smiling Friends or Hazbin Hotel? Well, regardless of what your answer is, put a pin on that for a second. They didn't just drop out of the sky one day, although it certainly feels like Zach did. Think of some of your favorite artists. For me personally, I think of the greats like Horihiko Araki, the creator of the iconic JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Tite Kubo, and my personal icon, rest his soul, Kentaro Miura, all genuine cultural pillars. But they didn't start out that way. Araki's JoJo had various less distinct looks before it came to become the iconic series that often is used for Gucci collaborations and showcased at the Louvre. Similarly, before Kubo broke out with his greatly adored series Bleach, he started out with a rougher, more experimental series called Zombie Powder. And while Miura's earliest work is nothing to scoff at, it absolutely pales in comparison to his elaborately detailed pages in his later years. Outside of goofily linking back to my old days on YouTube where I spoke about anime, I also want to point out that no matter how talented you are, you'll need to break a few sacrificial eggs to make a berserk. As generic as it sounds, we all have to start somewhere. What matters is where we take it, how we handle criticism over time, and evolve as creatives and as people. Which brings us to the topic of today. Love 'em or hate 'em, and I really mean hate. Seriously, my comments need to chill. Both Zach Hadel and Vivian Medrano have made incredible names for themselves within the animation industry. However, something that has become pretty clear to me is that the two have very different creative philosophies. Just a quick reminder to like my video and leave a comment below on what you think of Zach and Vivzi's careers. Helps push my video out to the algorithm, plus it's 100% free. If you look at Vivziepop's creation journey, you'll notice something pretty distinct. She started out as someone who drew like an edgy teenager, who spent probably a little bit too much time at Hot Topic drawing OCs while blasting Fall Out Boy. And hey, I really can't hate on that. I'm a millennial who got his start making AMVs of Bleach and Naruto set to Linkin Park, but as you can see, I've tried to evolve my editing since those days. Vivzi, on the other hand, designed many of her early characters with jagged, sharp bodies, and she's continued to use that style in all of her later works. And while she definitely struck gold early by doing what so few artists managed to do, she found a style that people loved, and she stuck with it, making very little variations over time. Then you look at Zach Hadel. Can you honestly tell me that this and this even feel remotely the same? While yes, his signature nasally voice has remained mostly the exact same one we love, his artistic style has constantly changed. And just to ease up on the glazing, Zach's style, although improving over time, is not exactly the best looking. Not to say that it's bad, he just has, let's just say, a kind of love for the disgusting. While I personally feel everyone I've ever known who drew things consistently ugly were just using it as a mask for being unable to draw things conventionally well, for Zach, I think it's mostly just his sensibilities and branding, as he's become pretty much the internet's favorite gremlin after all. So it really was a no-brainer that he took on a show with his talented friend Michael Cusack, who's known for creating simple but hilarious character designs. This is largely because he's well aware that in order for his work to improve, he needs to adapt and evolve as a creative, accepting that sometimes to create something better, collaborative change is needed. Much like George Lucas's wife making changes to the original Star Wars in the edit, you remove either one of them and you end up with a significantly less good final product. This is exactly why you can't say that Smiling Friends is good just because Michael was behind it or because just Zach was behind it. It was a collaborative process that took both of their minds to create.
It's hard because you could say like, oh, Zach's the animation guy and I'm the writing guy, but it's not as simple as that because Zach's an amazing writer too. And I also love animation. So like, you know, I like the Bliblies and other stuff like that.
While a show like Hazbin Hotel and later Helluva Boss essentially represents Vivziepop's teenage characters reworked into something she hopes will be taken as a mature adult animation, it's ironically found a massive teenage audience, largely because her approach to storytelling and animation has remained creatively unchanged and unchallenged. In contrast, Zach's animations have always been in flux, largely thanks to his ability to collaborate with other artists and allow their input to morph his own style and create a much better piece of art, as I just mentioned. As Smiling Friends is a great example of this. Not only did it require him to collaborate with various online artists, but it also was work closely with his friend and co-creator Michael Cusack to shape the style of the world. Take Pim, for example. A simple character design that to most just works, and you'd assume that just one of them thought him up, but in reality, he's a mix of both Zach and Michael's styles.
It's hard to say what we both try to make it very 50-50. I definitely make sure that the main characters have that Zach filter.
designs. And as much as I'd love to say that I'd watch an entire show of just Zach designs, that'd be a bit of a lie. His art is a little ugly, to say the least, but it's fun. Just, oh god, it'd be an overdose if it was just his characters. Projects like Gremlo and Hellbenders were cancelled for Zach, and yes, I know he didn't design all the characters in Hellbenders, but as co-creator, he had a huge hand in their creative direction. Despite being clearly upset about these cancellations, Zach never lingered on their failure, stating on multiple occasions he had to move on to bigger and better things, starting fresh and new, because as he put it, if the idea were good enough to begin with, it would have been made into a series.
So that's the rise and fall of Gremlo. And that's a good example of something where the three of us were just like, let's drop this as a character because I know we can all three do better. And guess what? We all three did better. The third guy made his own thing. Michael and I not only did our own stuff, but we were collaborating more. And yeah, I think that's an example again of taking a really good idea that you're really proud of and just going, you know what? I can do better. Like, that was its own thing. The same thing with Hellbenders. Like, that was its own thing. It's okay that it had its time and its place, but, you know, yeah, there's no shame in, like, leaving something and starting something new creatively.
This mindset stands in sharp contrast with Vivziepop's approach. She took her cancelled series of Zoophobia and literally rolled it up into a chaotic visual mess that is both Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss. While Zach opposes the idea of shared universes and lore, Vivzie's shows revel in it, feeding off the built-in fanbase of her past creations. This approach prevents her from ever truly starting something brand new. This isn't to say that it hasn't been incredibly lucrative for her. Vivzie has undeniably seen massive success with both of her shows, indie or not, but one thing that has remained a constant is her absolute disdain for constructive criticism. Critiques have ranged from her inability to write compelling stories, her refusal to adapt her art style, or the fact that maybe you shouldn't write an adult animated series with 1,000 swear words per second, especially if your biggest inspiration for adult animation is BoJack Horseman, which does not rely on 1,000,000 swear words per second, but instead crafts his humor from genuinely really well-written characters and visual gags that are pretty damn creative. That said, she's very wisely gone quiet on Twitter, having recently deactivated her account post-election. This shows that, at the very least, she's capable of making improvements to her mental well-being, but when it comes to her growth as an artist, that's an entirely different story. With Helluva Boss releasing online, it's clear that Vivzie has no intention of changing her character style or the way she writes her stories. While I'll admit the designs in the show are less visually painful than those in Hazbin Hotel, they're still cluttered and unnecessarily detailed. It's reminiscent of how 343 Industries overdesigned the Spartan armor in Halo. Seriously, not every design needs to be packed with 1,000,000 details. That said, I do think her human designs have been improving over the years. It's the reason why I think every time I see a human form of her characters, I think, damn, that looks actually really cute, only to be disappointed when I realize it's just a past look the character had. Even then, I'm still being charitable because her style of humans often just feels derivative of other better shows like Invader Zim and BoJack Horseman. In conclusion, Vivziepop is someone who always aims to be at the helm of her projects, never compromising her vision. While this has allowed her to create a dedicated fan base, it's also limited her capacity for creative growth, much like how Genndy Tartakovsky is known among his fan base to be absolutely awful when it comes to creating finales with his horrible writing choices, both due to their large popularity and brand recognition by big businesses, grant them creative liberty to continuously faceplant into more projects that ultimately end up panned by audiences and fans alike. I'm still holding out that Unicorn Warriors Eternal concludes in a way that erases my memory of Primal's rushed ending. On the other hand, Zach Hadel has consistently stayed ahead of the curve, learning from failures and openly admitting that he doesn't want to be stuck doing the same thing his whole life. His willingness to adapt, acknowledging his shortcomings, and reinventing himself as a creative has been a key factor in his ongoing success and love online. For Vivzie to achieve a similar level of adoration online, she may need to let go of her rigid control and embrace the idea of creative change.